evening, all. Thank you for joining us for the October edition of the Bharat Connect webinar session. And today's topic is how do you nurture a customer-centric culture at your workplace? We are in the middle of the experience economy, and there is no better differentiator than customer experience. How to provide the best possible customer experience is the question that every C-suite leader is grappling with. The importance of customer experience is backed by research. Brands with superior customer experience bring in about 5.7 times more revenue than their competitors, right? And companies that lead in CX outperform laggards by nearly 80%. And 66% of consumers consider customer service to be a deal breaker when buying, any product or service, right? And providing excellent customer experience is all about cultivating a mindset, a philosophy, and a cultural identity that empowers your organization to want to serve customers in the best way possible. This brings us to customer centricity and how it can be cultivated. We're going to discuss how to nurture customer centricity in your organization. To do that today, we are joined by three eminent panelists who have been there and done that. I'll give you a short introduction about them and get this discussion started. I see what everybody else can also see, but I think through what others do not, and hence provoke change and drive growth. I approach challenges the way I ran marathons, built to last for the long haul. These are the words from Anand Bhatia's LinkedIn profile. I was fascinated by this, and I read this multiple times. Anand currently serves as the CMO and EVP, Marketing Analytics and Business Intelligence of Fino Payments Bank Limited. He's involved in building a digital customer-centric bank, one transaction, one experience at a time. We're thrilled to have you as part of this discussion, Anand. I'm sure that we will have a great learnings from this discussion.
Absolutely. Looking forward to the evening.
Thanks, Anand. And the next one up is Vinay Kanchi. Vinay has 2 decades of experience in the contact center industry, driving innovative technology solutions for his customers. He has worked with top business brands, online travel companies, and global airlines worldwide. He has set up contact center operations for various clients in India, Canada, China, and the Philippines. Vinay is an expert in operations, sales and account management, business excellence, and automation. Many other aspects of contact center operations as well. Currently, he is a COO at Innovia, building ground up in the business process management space. We're happy to have you and look forward to your views on customer centricity, Vinay.
Thank you, Devaka.
Thanks, Vinay. Next up is Srijit Nair. This is an interesting thing about Srijit. When kids his age asked Srijit for chocolate, he specified Cadbury's. His love story with brands, connections, and power was probably subconscious. He has spoken directly to over 2,000 customers across 50 cities, walking with them through the customer journey, sometimes to their doorsteps. This is the tip of the iceberg on how he innovated branding and marketing for some of the large brands in the banking and retail space. Over the years, he has helped launch some of the most customer-centric brands in the Indian banking space using traditional media, digital, social, and artificial intelligence without underestimating the power of warm smile and a gentle touch. We're happy to have you with us. We are thrilled to hear your thoughts on customer centricity. Welcome to this panel, Srijit.
Thanks, Devaka. Thanks, everybody.
So without much further ado, we'll jump into the discussion straight away. So can we all take a moment on and define what customer centricity is all about? And if we can possibly go ahead and give some example to understand this better. I think this question is for all three of you, and anyone can go ahead.
Okay, I'll kind of start. That's a damn good question because it just kind of puts a lot of stuff that we do in the over the evening into the right context. I think customer centricity really is putting what that guy really wants, the end consumer, at the center of what you do, and at the same time ensuring that you're going to meet. I mean, especially those of us who come from a very regulated industry, ensuring that you meet all those requirements so that at the end of the day, in terms of providing him or her exactly what they need, you're not going to harm the person in any way. You're not going to harm the ecosystem in any particular way. I think in my mind, that's exactly what it means. And I'll give you an example. When we were launching the bank, and we probably this was a year into the bank, we moved to a subscription bank account. So a consumer actually had to pay us, pays us 449 rupees to own the bank account. And here we figured that there was one real need that was missing in the consumer's life, and which was getting a debit card on the spot. The guy walks into, and in the way we run our banking operations, we have actually no branches, just minimum regulatory requirement. But we have about 5 lakh points across the country where the guy can go and bank. I mean, it could be a local kirana store, a telecom shop. I know it could even be a chai ki dukaan somewhere. And out there, when the guy goes to open a bank account, what that guy really wants at that point is somebody to trust him and give him that hot, ready to use debit card. I think that is a real need to get started. And we built an entire ecosystem around it. So the right technology, the logistics, so that it's available at the right time, right place. And the consumer walks away with whatever it is that he or she really wanted or expected from the start of that relationship. So just really getting what the guy wants, right? And aligning the entire ecosystem around it, keeping in mind all the right compliances and ensuring that he or she doesn't get hurt, because there are frauds and other things that can happen. I guess in my mind is customer centricity, and we've just about built everything that we have around a thought like this.
Nice. I hope the other banks also follow this debit card
It's a
thing.
competitive advantage. Let them not do it.
Okay, I can go next. For me, customer centricity, have been in the B2C business for a very long time in my life. Also deal with B2B customers. For me, I think customer centricity is the ability of people in an organization to understand customer situations, perceptions, and expectations. It's a very simple definition, but when we are in this business of dealing with customers, we generally want to give what we want to give to the customer. We never look at their situations. We never look at what is their expectation from that product or service. It's always that customer centricity demands, that we make people the focal point, and all our decisions are related to delivering products and services and experience to create a good brand loyalty, great customer experience. And the best part, which everybody thrives on, is our marketing colleagues on this call will believe, is big bucks spent on marketing can be avoided by having good advocacy. I think customer centricity gets driven sometimes, in a one direction, but we also must realize that as organizations which must spend money on marketing can spend less if people down the line are delivering much better in terms of customer expectations and their perceptions as well as their situations. Always drive products and services based on situations. It really helps everybody in the business, including the customer. That's my 2 cents on customer centricity.
Great. So I'll go next, and I think there can't be a better definition than what Vinay and Anand have just explained to all of us, right? But I'll just put out a perspective to it on how customer centricity is important, or why are we speaking about customer centricity in the first place, right? See, it in any business, when we start off, yes, we think about the customer needs, we think about what he wants, how do we deliver that value to him, and all of that, and that's how any business starts off, by being customer centric. But somewhere down the line, as the business progresses, as the first 6 months, 1 year goes down, the focus kind of changes, and it becomes a whole lot of other things. It becomes, how do we get funding, how do we get top line, bottom line, revenues, growth, office politics, commute back from home, work from home, I don't know, n number of things come in and clog that mental space, which was initially available. So I think customer centricity is the feeling of getting up every day and thinking of day one, the day the founder of the company started the company, for what it was and what value it was supposed to deliver to the customer. And are we continuing to do that today? In our daily works, it might be very, very simple. The housekeeping staff who cleans the floor with the broom of the office, how is he contributing to customer centricity? If he or she starts thinking of how the customer would feel when he enters the office, and how well I can keep it neat and clean, or how spick and span it is, that is customer centricity. It's just decluttering our mind from everything else and going back to the basics and saying customer is what I'm serving.
Interesting. I see, from introducing instant products that customers can use, and then looking at customer centricity in a very different way, and Vinay giving us a very simple thing. I think this is going to be an interesting discussion around we have 3 different viewpoints here, right? So the next up question is to Vinay, just to follow up. So customer experience is the new oil. If we have to make it sound better, customer experience is the new product, right? And CX thought leader Kerry Bodine puts it across in the best possible manner. Exceptional customer experience are the only sustainable platform for competitive differentiation, right? So what is your take on this, Vinay?
So I'll go back to 2012. There is a book by Kerry Bodine, which is called Outside In. He exactly talks about this back 10 years back, about this whole concept, which probably many companies did take it on. Some of them probably learned half of it, quarter of it. Some people thought they can manage customer experience, customer satisfaction on their own. You see, the word has evolved over a period of time. There were times when people started with customer satisfaction scores. They just used to pose some questions to the customer. It used to be 10, 15 questions. And the poor guy has to then write down good, bad, ugly in each of those questions. Gone are those days, right? But Kerry pointed it out back in 2012 as to what was meant to be done, with customers, who customers are, what are their wants and needs. We all studied in our MBA schools, what's a want, what's a need, but we never implemented that, when it came to customers. We always went back and said, they need this, just give it to them. That's it. Don't think what is the segmentation. You didn't do any kind of homework when you were launching products and services in the market. So how do they perceive interactions they are having with your company today, especially service-oriented companies? What do they look at today? If you say customer centricity is the new oil, I have experienced vendor managers, who at times have come up and said, guys, don't bother about the money which we are going to pay you. Is your company good enough to deliver good customer centricity? And it starts with myself in the organization. So typical behavior in an organization is that, customer centricity is only at the front end. Okay, the guys who are really, really braving it out with your customers in the front end, be it the retail side of the business, be it the business to business side of the business. But when it doesn't start from the top, the problem starts from there. So customer centricity, I do believe, is the new oil, and the oil needs to start pouring right from the top. Everybody needs to be talking the same language. It cannot be that we expect only our frontline guys, to give all the solution on this earth to the customer, but at the same time, give great advocacy scores. That is impossible. Right. So when Kerry wrote this book, some of us were taught some of these pages, some of these lessons. There are different structures to the way customer centricity was defined by her. 5 different structures. I wish everybody still goes back to 2012 and reads this book by her, it is definitely a great book to go after. That's 2 cents from me on what Kerry said about customer centricity being the new oil.
Well, while you were talking about this, while you were mentioning the gap, right? The product gap and the customer expectations, or the service gap and the customer expectations. So I just want to quickly circle back and ask you one question here. So in terms of, how would you manage the customer expectations when you have a gap, right? The demand and the supply, there's always going to be this gap, right? And this is definitely going to affect the customer centricity, because the product pipeline or the roadmap or the services that we are going to offer are not always aligned to the customer's expectations, right? So how do you align this and improve your customer centricity and the customer satisfaction as well?
Great question, Divakar. Thank you for asking it. And I think this is where all modern companies are nowadays focusing on, is the amount of money they spend on product guides nowadays.
Mm-hmm.
A large amount of money is being spent on actually designing a product, looking at the smallest of nuances which the customer wants, be it a service or a product.
Mm-hmm.
That is the gap which constantly comes back as customer feedback. And if you do not have the ability to fix those gaps in your product roadmap, you will always have challenges in the front end. You will lose customer advocacy. So there are few more discussions which are in the pipeline today, Divakar, which you are probably going to chair. But this is exactly what is happening, is that, the front end which provides and receives feedback, how well is it taken back to the back end seamlessly? Because it's like Chinese whispers, the customer said something. By the time it went back 10 layers back to the product team, it has already lost its essence.
Right.
So something which was a big issue now becomes a very small issue, which is fixed with a small tweak, but that is not what your customer wanted. So I would urge all product and service companies to actually look at, and Srijit, you've spoken to 2,000 customers. You would have experienced Chinese whispers in a big way, in the way what the customer wanted versus what you communicated back to your own teams at the back end.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I'll just take a quick second to probably tell about an anecdote that I'd faced. Not naming names. So this was with one of the banks that I've worked with earlier. And we were setting up signature stores or signature branches to showcase what we would be able to do in the coming 10 years, 15 years from now, right? So those were our showcase branches to the world. And all the teams internally were asked to go back to customers, figure out what they wanted, etc. And one of the interesting feedbacks that we got was that why don't you have ATMs that are main road facing? Why do I need to get down from the car, walk inside into a dark cubicle, and then have a security guard staring at me, enter my PIN without ensuring that nobody else is able to see it, and then withdraw my money and run back to the car? Imagine it's raining, then I'm all wet. There's no point of doing that. Why don't I have drive through ATM or something like that? It's very simple, right? You just have the ATM face the main street. That's all that is required. So we said that's an interesting. I mean, in fact, one of the customers himself gave us a solution, and he gave us images also of banks abroad that were doing this. So we put this up internally, and it was taken up and all of that, and it went up the chain and up the ladder, and somewhere the compliance team felt that it would expose us to robberies and risks like that, because it's main road facing, so you don't have to go through the security, etc. So it'd be very difficult to organize that. So let's not do it. Let's figure out some other way of getting this done. And it was scrapped at that. But then the sequel to the story is that finally, when the design layout came out, we found that the ATM was finally accommodated behind the cashier's desk. So actually, you had to get behind the cashier, because that was the only space available. Everybody had taken everything else, And they said, okay, this is the only space available, so let's put it here. So again, a classic example of how, feedback, it becomes a Chinese whisper, not given its weightage, can become absolutely disastrous and hilarious in some ways.
Yeah, thank you, Devakar.
Nice example, Srijit. Thank you. Thanks, Vinay. So moving on to our next discussion point is, this is pointed towards Anand. As Simon Sinek famously says, people don't buy what you do, they buy why you do it. If you talk about what you believe, you will attract those who believe what you believe. Customer centricity runs across organization, and it is a culture. What are the three important things you would do to nurture this culture to benefit your customers and your organization?
I think that's a damn good one. And also, he's always said one thing, that consumers buy into how you make them feel, right? Products are honestly ephemeral. It's just a way to an end. The best way of doing it, and that's what Srijit has been doing for a very long time, is really getting folks who make products to really go out in the sun, rain, storm, whatever, stand out there and spend time with the consumer in a fairly unstructured manner. Because the moment it is structured, moment somebody has given you an incredible structure of how to go about it, you'll only get answers to questions that you've already put out there. But when you just spend time with this guy, what is it that you're doing? How are you using my product? What's your thought process and stuff? And essentially, befriend the consumer. You really don't get through. So I think the first real step is somewhere, and this is where I guess it flows top down. I mean, right from the CEO to CMOs will invariably do it, but I think it's very important for CPOs to really say, okay, my guy, this product guy, is going to go out there and sit with the consumer and spend time out there. So that's, I think, one. Second one, really building a very strong consumer-centric organization is feedback. Feedback is as they say, right? Cliche term is that it's the breakfast of champions. I think that gets very important, because see, in this entire CX journey, you are going to build mathematical models. What's the next best product? When should I offer? What should I price it at? When should I give it, etc. Nothing can make that model better if feedback is not flowing into it. And feedback would be numerical, which is clicks and the times the guy buys, and actual transaction data, as well as a lot of observational data. Because very often your frontline guys are great sources of information. Yes, at times there could be a way that there is some amount of filtering that's possible, but I guess once everyone's aligned that, listen, by filtering you're actually harming yourself, I think it just kind of flows in, and your models, your ways of looking at the how, the why, the when, etc., starts getting very good. The third one, really, in building this, I guess, is always alignment. Everyone has got to realize that, as Mahatma Gandhi already said, right? The consumer is the reason why your business exists. We've all been through shops who want to shut for 2 hours in the afternoon, or where they really don't care about the customer, because it's kind of a near monopoly status that they would run. That sadly doesn't exist anymore. I mean, we are all in an insanely competitive environment, and given that alignment, that everyone's got to realize that it's the consumer who pays our salaries, so we really can't take him or her for granted. I think once that kind of comes in, and the reason why I stress this point a lot is that there are certain industries where we do at times tend to take the consumer for granted, because we believe our product is very complicated, the guy won't understand, but for whatever XYZ reasons, we need to add all these layers. Some of it is really just, for the want of a better word, CYA. But other than that, that once that realization comes in, that look, I've got to make it simple for this guy. And you've already always backed it up with saying, how is the guy buying? Why is the guy buying? How am I impacting his life or her life? And you have that feedback loop. It all connects in. So I think these 3 steps go a long way in really building the right DNA to be able to serve the consumer, right? And this DNA is not built sitting in air-conditioned offices. It's seriously built at 45 degrees, 48 degrees, middle of nowhere, Jodhpur, Bikaner, Darbhanga, Hosur, wherever the consumer is, sitting out there and having chai with a guy. Otherwise, it just doesn't happen, at least in my view.
Right. So, and I certainly agree with you on these 3 points, and especially the feedback. I think yesterday I was trying to buy a stabilizer at a retail outlet, and being the festive season, they were like really crowded. So I walk through the store and I go there and ask for a refrigerator stabilizer. So they thought that I'm there to buy a refrigerator. So this guy quickly points me to the guy who handles the refrigerator section. So I walk towards him. Okay. And then that guy is all into, and then he says like the refrigerator section is this side. And I said, I don't want refrigerators. I want a stabilizer for the refrigerator, right? And then he quickly disappears. He doesn't even point me to the refrigerator stabilizer section. I stand there and I asked some people, and they were reluctant to help me because it's a stabilizer, right? It's just about 2,000, 3,000 bucks, and they don't want to take that opportunity, spend 10, 15 minutes with me to get that, sale done, right? So now
the SOP was to upgrade you to a refrigerator. So, they had a very, very complex AI algorithm that told them that, the guy walks in for a stabilizer, which means, probably he's worried about his fridge. So, upgrade the guy to a fridge that has a built-in stabilizer. I guess that is what the, complex algorithm running at the back end gave an output to the end.
Right. And then I walk out of that store without the stabilizer and without the refrigerator as well. So now he's lost a customer, and I don't feel comfortable going to the shop again. Right. So it's simple interactions like this could also push customers away. And I'm not sure if this feedback would really reach to the top. Right. Because since I also raised a red flag there, I said that I'm not going to come back to the shop. This is not how you treat the customers, and I walked off. But I'm sure that this is not going to get noticed and move to the top, right?
So Divakar, sorry.
No,
so
no,
Divakar,
go on.
What happens is in such kind of places, stores or organizations where you find people who are unwilling to listen, unwilling to really support you with your needs and your wants. It's very evident that it's not flowing from the top. It's very evident. Right. So whatever you try to do in such an environment, it gets very difficult for you to convey your message back. It happens with, very large companies. Today, if you look at these apps for hailing cab services, okay, there is no place where you can actually provide feedback. It's all pre-decided. And even if you want to provide feedback, there is no place to provide feedback. So what do? You go to LinkedIn.
It exists. Yes, LinkedIn, Twitter, and the moment you put it up there, the resolution is instant because it's in the public
domain. That is correct. So I was coming to that.
Than having direct feedback.
Correct. But everything is not naming and shaming. All organizations need a chance, because there are times when you're not able to invest into customer centricity, and people can provide advice. Take it. Right. It's coming free of cost to you. The worst part is nobody wants free advice nowadays. Everyone wants to go to the big fours or get the consulting advisory and then try to implement something which the poor free guy was giving it anyways to you.
Well, the big fours are busy running surveys on all these poor guys.
Exactly.
There's this famous example about consultants where they say that a consultant is he who looks at your watch and tells you the time. So he looks at your watch, you had it all along.
No, but there is a real reason why you want to pay the guy, because the moment you paid the guy tons of money, the pressure is actually on you to start implementing. And so that's why people are actually very happy paying a ton of money for all this, because then also what happens is that if something goes wrong, you can always say, that guy said this. So in some ways you're insulating yourself, because the moment if it's your idea and something goes wrong, some guy up the line is going to say, but I told you so, and all those murmurs will happen. The moment you paid a bomb to McKinsey, the pressure is not on McKinsey, pressure is on you. And you have an alibi. So that's how the ecosystem works.
and these big fours can't be wrong, no? That's a general state of mind that most organizations have when they go, knock their doors to consult on, the ideas and other things. Interesting. So, I'll move on to my next discussion point. This is to Srijit. So I was going through a report recently stating that customers are reluctant to provide feedback as they are unsure if their feedback will be acted upon. What kind of customer feedback do you collect, and how do you respond to the negative feedback that you receive?
Yeah, so just taking some examples from the anecdote that you said, about buying a stabilizer, and something what Anand was talking about of collecting feedback in an unstructured manner, because the moment you make it structured, what happens is that it becomes somebody's responsibility. So it's just a blame game from there on. It is XYZ team's responsibility to pick up feedback, also to resolve that issue if there is an issue, if there is a process improvement, etc., that needs to happen. It's not my responsibility, it's their responsibility. I think the best way to do it is to ensure that it is as democratized and as decentralized as possible, and to ensure that customer feedback is taken at every single level. So you need to take customer feedback at a CEO level. You need to take customer feedback at a mid-manager, senior manager kind of level. You need to take it as an entry, management trainee, cashier, teller kind of level. Everywhere customer feedback is very, very important, and that's somehow got to go into the DNA of the organization. You need to be able to ask customers to get into that culture. I mean, again, in India, we are very very lethargic to ask customers how did they feel about. I mean, even at multi MNC chains like KFC and the Domino's of the world, they don't seem to be asking you feedback. Whereas if you go abroad on those same chains, they'll start asking you feedback after every transaction, ask you to rate them, etc. Right? Typically, all these Ola, Ubers of the world, they ask you to rate the driver, to rate the ride, etc. Again, it's still structured. It can be more destructured or decentralized, as the case may be, but we need to get into that culture of asking after every single thing. You cook a meal at your home, give it to your family members and ask them, how was it? Was the salt more? It's okay, tell me. I mean, I don't see that culture at all, and that's something that's very worrying for me. And because unless you ask, most probably you're not going to get that feedback. You don't get that feedback, you're so far out, you're so far on the wrong track, it's literally impossible to again get back to the right one. So it's better to get that feedback right at the outset, correct incremental wrongs that you're making, and fall back in line. So that's very critical for me. Another point is offline versus online. So in the offline world, at physical branches, at physical brick and mortar stores, it is slightly difficult to get structured feedback. But if you bring it as an ethos, if your employee is empowered to ensure that he asks the customers, he can if the customer has had a bad experience, he has the power to probably do some amount of remedy. It's as simple as a kid crying. Today, the classic example that I would say is in banks. If you go, the place where they have the pay slip, etc., right, where you need to write in and fill up the form, you have a pen, and they have the audacity to hang the pen by a chain, as if they're treating the customers like thieves. That's the ridiculousness of the branch manager does not even have the power to buy a pen in God forbid the pen goes missing. We're treating our own employees like thieves, we're treating our own customers like thieves, and we're not going to get anywhere by doing that. So it's important to have a feeling of trust. It's important to have a culture of empowerment where every single employee feels that it is his responsibility to ensure that the customer walks out happy. And if the customer is not happy, let me do whatever is required to make him happy. It's okay, to probably give him an extra gift voucher, to give him an extra cup of soda, whatever is required to make him happy, to make him cheerful. by the time he exits. So in the offline world, it's slightly more difficult to get feedback, but it is much more easy to make it measurable, make it impactful. In the online world, the feedback taking is very easy. You run a form, you give them a 5-star rating, you ask people to click it, and people will do it more often than not. But then the question is, what are you doing with that feedback? Are you going back and really solving what you intend to solve? Do you have it put out? So is there a commitment that you're making that, yes, I will solve this? So again, going back to what we were discussing about customers coming on LinkedIn and social media and putting up requests. Half the time, all the brands reply saying, please DM us, here is a ticket number, and now we can take this chat offline. And if you read the text that the person has written, it is all about the fact that he's been given repeated ticket numbers and nothing has happened to it. And the reply from the brand is, here is one more ticket number, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. What's the whole point? So it's important to get that. That's again falling back from the fact that the social media executive or the person who's handling it, the customer service executive, is not empowered to take any decision. He has to write mails, go up the ladder, take a CEO, CMO, GM's approval, and then come back to the customer. It's a long drawn process.
Right. So I think, in a B2C situation, taking and collecting feedback is easier since it's, one-to-one communication. In a brick and mortar store or on an online, it is like while we are using apps, it's an individual user who uses this, right? But in an organization, a large organization, when we make them as our customers, right? These feedbacks, there are multiple teams who are working with the same product or a solution that we have sold to the customers, right? How do you take feedbacks in those situations, right? Because probably most often we take testimonials from people and then we publish them, but it's not a feedback, but multiple teams work cohesively using the same platform, right? So do you guys have any way forward in collecting
there are multiple structured ways, like I think Vinay was mentioning about customer satisfaction scores, NPS, CSAT. There are a number of ways of numerically denoting it and putting a weightage to what the customer has experienced, calculating averages and tracking your scores, etc. I think most brands are doing it more often than not. The important thing is, what are you doing with the feedback on a minute micro scale? On an average, yeah, you may be doing something, you may be going back and doing some process improvements, but by then you have lost the individual customer. So
Right.
For want of a shoe, the horse is lost kind of a scenario. So what are you doing at that micro scale? So you need to also address the micro as well as the macro problems. So at the ground, empower the person who is interacting with the customer at the senior level, be receptive to the feedback that is coming up, and have your doors open. Anybody should be able to come in and say, look, boss, I don't have numericals to support what I'm saying or what I'm going to say, but this is what I feel, this is what I'm hearing from the customer, this is what the customer is coming and telling me. And you cannot question that. You cannot say, okay, fine, you're saying that you've heard it, but give me a voice recording or give me a testimonial that I can publish on the website banner or mobile app. That's not the game there. The important thing is to understand where it is coming from, or else, of course, like you always have that option out of paying big bucks to the big fours and getting the same in a packaged, nice formatted PPT and then listening to it in a boardroom.
True. So not everything is a marketing activity. Sometimes
another way of looking at it is that in a very B2B kind of environment also, a good sign that your stuff is working is referrals. So if your client, and if you are, let's say, selling a solution to a large corporate and you're engaging with N number of teams over there, if your client, whoever that could be, a bank, a manufacturing company, whatever, is referring you here and there, then that means it's a very, very strong sign that you're doing something right. Or if there are individual team members over there, let's say 4 or 5 different entities in a large corporate, and you suddenly start seeing that, oh, there is this guy in this department or that guy in some other department who is referring you to others. I think then that just becomes a very, very, that's in a way, great sense of collecting positive feedback, because endorsement is always, that kind of works. If you've been working a lot and, your client is on 0 referrals, you mean that you've just about, passed muster. You've done the job, they're okay, they're going to pay you, but, there's nothing exemplary. I think that is a very stern test of actually checking out feedback. Because see, fundamentally, even in a B2B environment, the B on the other side is actually a customer. He's a human at the end of the day, right? I mean, B2B, B2C are words that we've coined. Everybody is a consumer at the end of the day. Even the business is a consumer, right? So a lot of those mechanics actually still remain the same. It's just that maybe decision making may be a little more structured, and beyond that, nothing. But at the end of the day, even very large B2B environments, you'll be surprised at the amount of non-rationality that can happen in decision making. Right? It's not always a rational decision. It's,
most of our decisions are impulsive at the end of the day.
Not impulsive, but probably more documented. I would want to, for the want of a better word, I would say they're more documented, because obviously nobody wants to, take the blame should something go wrong. But other than that, it tends to be structured. But the amount of, otherwise it was incredibly rational. That will always be, for example, the cheapest guy who'll get the job, or L1 will always win, or something like that, right? But ultimately brand experience, whom are you dealing with, the person on the other side. More often than not, corporates are very happy to pay top dollar, because on your side, if you're selling a solution to them, you're getting your best guy, and they'll say, no, but I only want this guy to handle my project, and I'm willing to pay you double to get that guy. Then it's an absolutely non-rational decision, right? You're buying into that ability. So those become other ways of also checking feedback and then building your own sense of association with the brand.
Interesting. So, Vinay, do you have anything to add, or I'll move?
No, I think both Srijit as well as Anand have hit the nail on the head on as far as this is concerned. I think negative feedbacks, which are provided by customers, I think a lot of us say, let's take it with a pinch of salt. I don't know what it means in the customer service industry. It just doesn't have any meaning. A feedback is a feedback, whether it's positive or negative. When a negative feedback comes in, you definitely need to put your arms around it almost immediately, not procrastinate it. You know what? This is going to be in sprint number 4. And then sprint number 4 never sees the light of the day because sprint 3 is delayed. So, that's how we typically behave when it comes to negative feedback. And in the journey, you're losing customers. They're falling off the cliff. And you don't realize that, because marketing spent, let's assume $15 or $20 in acquiring that customers. You lost a plethora of customers till you reach sprint 4 to develop that small nuance, which could have saved all these customers falling off the cliff. Now, it all means how agile you are as a company to embrace negative feedback and almost immediately work on it. Deprioritize some of the new items which are coming on board, or new features which are coming on board, and fix this existing feature. Because your current bread and butter depends on what you currently have in the market. You can't wait for 6 months down the line or till sprint 4 goes live, is when really these customers are going to get the real benefit out of it. I think sometimes you have to proactively start looking at negative feedback and then embrace it. I think many of us forget to embrace negative feedback, and we just push it out, procrastinate it.
True. This is pretty much true in most of the product roadmaps that in my past that I've encountered, and losing some customers in this process. It's pretty difficult for you to go convince customers to hold on until this gets on, and then it gets delayed, and then we again go back. Relatable. Right. So moving on to the last discussion pointer, this is out for all three of you. So technology and automation are vital components of customer experience functions today. How are you positively utilizing technology to create a customer-centric organization? And how are you tying up everyone's job in your organization around the around the customers, right? And if you can give us some real life examples in implementing this customer first approach, that'd be great as well.
I'll go first, Divakar, on this.
Yeah.
I think all of us come with a lot of experience in terms of how we have adopted technology, because there are lots of firms who actually think, you know what, why buy something which is already available off the shelf, instead of we ourselves building it, even though we don't have the expertise to build it. So what happens is you are a technology firm, you want to embrace new technologies, but you want to build it on your own, thereby losing time over a period of time. What we did with our firms and the firms which I worked in the past is we just went ahead and bought the right tool for the right environment, be it a CRM, be it any back office processing tool. We just went ahead with the best. It costed us money, but at the same time, it made us win the customer, get all these feedbacks which we have been discussing for the last 30 minutes seamlessly. Now, what's the point in doing and investing time in something which somebody else has already mastered it for you? There are some world-class CRMs. They cost a lot, but they also give you great insights. Okay, but you have to spend time on really, I would say, looking at their analytics, looking at their reports, really to action all of this. We did a small implementation with one of the CRMs about 3 months back. Until such time we did that implementation, we were a black box for one of our clients. We had no idea what was coming in and what was going out, because the client was kind of okay, not looking at this black box. They did not know what was coming in. They did not know what was going out. But now we know exactly what is coming in, what is happening to a particular transaction, what is the time frame required to process transactions. Otherwise, people have these anecdotal thought process, this is what happened in 2020. This is what happened in 2019, all perception driven, no data driven approach. So now when you implement these tools as well as automate some of your processes, they come with these reports, they come with these analytics based on which probably you can take your decisions. You can take your decisions of automating further some of those processes. Two, you can focus on training your current employees. Your employees constantly need training. There is never a dull moment in any product life cycle, any service life. It's always buzzing if you are able to capture all this feedback from a tool or an automation program. That is when your company is going to be really successful to really, go back to the customer and say, you know what, Mr. Customer, I have worked on the data for your customers, and this is what I need to present to you. You can take this back to your product guys in a client-facing organization and see how you can fix it. If I'm doing an outsourcing job today, I pretty much have to go back to my client and tell them, guys, you need to fix something at your backend. This is what we found out from the tools and the CRM which we have implemented. So you see, it's a chain reaction. Once you implement good tools, you have automated some of your processes, you will reap benefits. I mean, there will be an army of people who can work manually. It really has no meaning at all because no feedback gets captured. Everything is for 9 hours is what they come in, clock in, do their best for the customer. But what really happened with a customer who did not have a great experience never got captured, never went back to the product teams. What good is a process like that? So that's my thing about, all of us need to embrace technology, automation, CRMs. These are a way of life. You have to make your life easy, to make it easier for the customer to believe in you. That's pretty much from me.
Okay.
Okay, I'll go next. I think that was really spot on. Today it's just essential, mission critical for every single brand, whether you're consumer facing or not, to invest in tech which will allow you to churn data. Right. So then whether you're going in with HDFS clusters, you're using, whatever, you put stuff on the cloud and using their model, whatever, then the hardware quote, the machine really be. But I think it's just a must, because if you don't have the ability to compute, you are really going to be hamstrung. Because today there is just so much of data coming in a structured as well as unstructured manner, that there is just no way that conventional methods are going to be able to handle it. And the quantum of data is just going to go on increasing. So one, investment in technology. Secondly, investment in the right tools to be able to really figure out, random correlations, and then the causality behind it. Because otherwise you could just come up with something very, very shady and suspicious, and it will eventually give you very, very wrong and misleading results. So I think these are the two things when it comes to tech that really need to get there. Of course, you have all the, see, even CRMs, etc. And again, talking from a very, very retail, kind of focus, CRM, etc. is also still culture, because it won't work till that feedback kind of thing comes in. So tech ensures that you have the right, the machinery, but it's still, very largely still the man and not the machine. That's going to matter, because that's from where a certain amount of the unstructured feedback will kind of come in. So there's always a good mix of those two. And I think good organizations tend to get that right pretty well.
See, my 2 cents on this is that, again, there's no escaping the fact that tech is gonna rule our lives now and in the future also. There's no escaping the fact that whether it is structured data or whether it is big data, data analytics is going to drive customer satisfaction, is going to drive the tools that or the services and the solutions that you're providing to the customers. You will have a huge quantum of feedback coming in. Processing that manually is definitely not a good idea, and you need rapid and huge investments in tech. The problem with that I found out is, one, there is an underlying mistrust or reluctance among among the entire team to adopt new tech. Adoption of new tech and the pace at which new tech is adopted, that has to change dramatically. You introduce a CRM, the field team takes, the first couple of months goes in saying, no, the CRM is not as great as I imagined it would be. The next 2 months goes in saying, okay, you want a particular, dynamic or a particular standard of working. I don't know whether I am suitable or I am best suited to deliver that. I have not made these reports in my previous organization. Those kind of, thought processes. So it's very important that as leaders, we train our teams, we work with our teams to stop these glass ceilings from happening, tech glass ceilings, like I like to call it. Tell them that, look, this is a tech, this is the way forward. It's like when computers came, everybody's like, I'd lose my job, and let me stop. So there are labor unions across India, protesting, saying no computers. It's hilarious now when you think about it, but it happened. And that's happening in all of our concerns at junior levels, at mid-senior levels, etc. Other than the team that is introducing the tech, everybody else is very wary about it, not very trusty about it, etc. And that's one major cultural issue that we all need to work towards. The vision has to be very clear. It has to be very clearly communicated why we are migrating from one tech to the new tech. There are times when, within a span of 3 years, you have to migrate to a new tech because that is better, or the previous tech wasn't solving your needs. That is absolutely fine. You have to explain it in layman language to the teams so that they understand it. Second, to make tech an integral part of your life, to ensure that if it's a LMS, then the executive is waking up and starting his day by looking at the LMS system. If it is a CRM, then the service guy is looking at the CRM and basing his decisions on those on the insights that the CRM system is throwing out, right? More often than not, whether you've introduced the CRM or not, his previous day looks very similar to his next day. That is not the change that, then you're not driving any, you're making rapid investments, but you're not driving any realistic change. So it's very important to get the man and the machine working together, to have a culture where there's no blame game, and to have feedback, internal feedback about tech also coming in at a very rapid and a transparent and a clear manner. Second part is, I think from a tech team's perspective, I've seen that a lot of tech teams are not very proactive in terms of accepting feedback. The philosophy is, we understand tech, nobody understands it like us. It's almost a class divide, like an educated and an uneducated person, things like that. So when there is a feedback that comes in sprint one, in the UAT, it's not given the weightage that it should have got. Added to it is the timeline approach that comes in from the senior management. There is a big tech issue or something is not working as good as it should be working. Timelines need to get stretched, they need to get postponed if required. And that call has to be made by somebody who understands the tech, understands the importance of the error or the bug that has come in. More often than not, I've seen that at senior levels, they don't understand bugs, they don't understand the criticality of bugs. And hence, if a deadline has been given, it is sacrosanct. So you push and you move out, a basic and MVP version of the project. And then the sales team or the ground team is not really happy with it, and it creates all sorts of confusions in the organization.
So pretty much what has been working has stopped working now, post that piece.
Yeah, and then teams feel that then all sorts of problems, cultural problems start coming in. I am working hard, they are sending me a buggy product from the corporate. Why should I continue to do it? Attrition happens. By the time you resolve it, customer satisfaction has taken a plunge. So instead of satisfying customers, you've actually started dissatisfying them.
So summarizing our discussion, I see that it is always the feedback, and especially it's an unstructured feedback that would help us in terms of taking this customer centricity forward, and which also should be supported with data-driven approach, investing in the right tools, not on the cost perspective, but in terms of customer satisfaction and how it could benefit the customer. I think, and also driving the internal stakeholders and keeping them confident that implementing these new technologies is not to police them, but for improving their productivity and making their lives easier, is something that this has come out of this this discussion, and I'm really happy to understand these diverse perspectives from all three of you. And I'll have the floor open, and let's see if our audience have any questions for our panelists. So I already see one hand going up. Yes, Abhijit.
Yeah, hi. Good evening to all. My question is to all three, panelists. Anyone can answer this. So this is more towards, generic kind of question. In new age era, in today's era, when every company, every traditional company is very much scared of new brands or new technological companies which are going to kill their market share and all. Is there any way wherein we can do a quantifiable way which can measure the customer centricity within the organization, apart from the typical ways like customer satisfaction survey or net promoter score, or for that matter customer feedback survey and all? So is there any quantifiable way which will define and change the rules of this?
So I can answer part of it, and my other colleagues on the call can also do that. I think Abhishek, right? Great question.
Yeah.
Something which some of us went through in our careers, when it came to this kind of a situation, as to how to handle multiple areas of matrices. Now, from if you want to measure customer centricity, I don't think there is a metric to measure customer centricity, but there are corollaries which can clearly identify what is exactly happening in your organization and at what levels. Because remember, customer centricity starts with we ourselves first. because that customer centricity has to be with an HR team, an operations team, a team which is a business of technologists. Each of us have to become internally customer centric even before we go external. The problem with our current cultures, which many of us deal with today, is that our internal customer centricity itself is on the lower side, and that you can measure it using ESAT, for example, or you can say a feedback which many of us run for, being proactive or not being proactive with each other's internal questions or internal priorities. Now, when you have an organization which is internally customer centric, you will also find them to be externally customer centric. So the way probably you could measure it with it is a good ESAT score, and you could also combine it and see with a good NPS score or a good CSAT score. So if all three matrices are in alignment, then you will realize that as an organization, you're customer centric. I haven't dealt with this in the past, but I do believe that it starts in-house first and then you go external. Over to you, Sirish and Srijit and Anand.
I'll add to this. I think one way of checking whether the organization is internally aligned is what are people saying after a meeting, which is around these topics. If you folks, kind of tumble out of the room saying, what man, what bunkers, etc., then you know that there is a challenge, right? Then it's, this is really an uphill battle. So if one is privy to that by virtue of being forget even a big four, any kind of, consultant to an organization, I think that's definitely a red sign. Other than that, a good way of figuring out whether a company is customer-centric, I think often is the cross-sell ratio of the product. While I know that many of the industries that most of us here are associated with have a huge challenge with mis-selling and stuff, but still, it becomes a good ratio because then you can't keep missing. You can do it 1 year, 2 years, 3 years, but somewhere or the other, it's going to come back to haunt you. But if you look at examples of the West, I mean, there are examples are always given. I know that Wells Fargo got into some trouble because of wrong selling. But overall, when that ratio is high, when you have consumers buying more and more products from you, it's clearly a sign that, one, you've done a great job of relationship building. Secondly, what you have really makes sense to the customer. And there are banks in India, I think, which would do a pretty good job because I think somehow they just get the consumer experience fairly right. And that becomes another good external metric. Internal metric is just simply listening to conversations once the most important guy has left the room. What is it that the other guys are saying?
Yeah. So I think one metric that I really love is measuring customer LTVs. Let's just I'll just briefly explain LTV for somebody who doesn't understand it. Imagine you go to a retail store for the first time. You would not buy more than probably 1 or 2 or more than 5, 6 products, because you don't really trust them. So you're just going for a first time, picking up a couple of biscuits, couple of snacks, putting them into your basket, getting to your checkout, and walking off with that. The next time you go, you would again probably buy 5, 7, 5, 6 products. After a given point of time, you start trusting the store predominantly because the customer service is good, assumably. That is when you start really buying a lot of your purchase from there. You start doing your monthly groceries there. You start buying bigger products and bigger ticket size from there. So somebody like Divakar would go and actually buy a refrigerator from that store if he had got his stabilizer when he asked for it, right? So that's LTV. So stabilizer is a small value product. Refrigerator is like the big ticket size product. And if the lifetime value of the customer is jumping by 2x, 3x, 5x, or whatever, then from a customer satisfaction measurability perspective, you have got a lot of things right. I'm not saying everything is right because it's still possible that some things are wrong here and there, but that's okay. More often than not, you've got things right. From an employee satisfaction perspective or an employee trigger point perspective, I think one of the best things to do is to just have an open floor and engage in some FGDs. Do some focus group discussions with the employees. More often than not, if you've got a culture which is open and where the employee doesn't feel threatened or will not get thrown out for asking the right questions, I've seen that more often than not, employees are more than forthright to ask their questions and say that this is going wrong and this is what I feel, etc. If you don't want to go in that direction, not be so open about it, then probably you could use the help of big data and start analyzing the chat section on your official communicator and see what kind of discussions are people having. Are they going out for lunches more often? Are they hanging out more often? Are they having subject related discussions more often? What's happening on Slack? What's happening on your other community groups, etc. If colleagues trust each other and they trust the management, these topics will be in alignment with what the management has proposed. And if that trust is not there, then the management speaks A and the colleagues are speaking about Z. So you would be able to figure out the discrepancy.
Good point. Thank you. Yeah.
I think we have one more person who's raised hand. Kalai, you want to go next?
Yeah, hi. Thank you all. So my question is to Anand Bhatia. So Anand, I mean, in the older days, the bank, the way of operating, it's completely on the paper and they do a lot of process and everything. Now the bank adapted to the technology and they are doing more of a digital way. So I just wanted to get your view on this. Is it because they need to tell the customer that we are a customer-friendly banks, or they have a low feet on street?
I think this is a very good one. In fact, in the early days of digitization, the joke in a lot of banks was that, look, let's turn digital because we'll save on tons of money, migrate customers from net banking to mobile banking because it is cheaper, etc., or move from branch banking to net banking because it is cheaper. But I think that era is really, really gone. Today, every single bank realizes that if you are not going to be available, kabhi bhi, as in anytime, anywhere, you're not going to reach out to your consumer. Because today, I think our consumer, in an earlier time, there was scarcity, right? So consumers are not seen better. But today, with the level of exposure that consumers have, courtesy, everything around them, right? I mean, be it e-com, be it, for example, payment space, right? I think e-com has grown on the back of payments, and payments have grown on the back of growth in e-com. So it's just now in the DNA, it's in the organization, it's in the ecosystem. So it's no longer an alternative. It is mandatory. Anyone who's not going to be able to be incredibly digital, except for some very, very niche areas, is just not going to survive. So from a time where it was more manufacturer or bank-driven thought, today it's incredibly consumer-focused as a thought. I think consumer has the full power. Earlier, it was a kind of scarcity environment, so organizations got away with it. But today, there is absolutely no chance because, honestly, we are in a state where there is zero scarcity, even in the remotest part of the country. And I've been to some of really remote parts of the country, courtesy 3G, 4G, and now 5G. Financial services can just about reach everywhere. So maybe the soap cannot reach there, or shampoo and tea cannot reach there, but for sure, man, your bank can get there. So it's just there. It's part of the DNA now.
Thanks. Thank you.
So, participants, any more questions that you guys have? Okay, I don't see any hands going up. So I think we're overshot by another 10 minutes. I thank you, all three of you, for taking this time to participate and share your thoughts on this webinar. I really enjoyed this session, and it was really delightful and insightful to have all three of you. Thank you again, and I wish all three of you a happy Diwali. So I think this festive season may bring joy and good health for all of us.
Absolutely, and I hope you get that fridge.
Make it a double door.
Yes.
Thank you, everybody. Thank you, Devaka.
Thank you so much.
Thanks.
Awesome.
Thanks, everybody, and
Thank you.
wish you a
Thank
very
you.
happy festival too.
Thank you.